Welcome back. A research fellow has revealed there is no national education standard framework in place for the rollout of the standard-based curriculum. Dr. Kilala Devetechi says a task force has now been established to come up with a national education standard framework for the standard-based curriculum. Esther Bralinwani reports.
In an interview with the NBC National News, Dr. Kilala Devetechi says standard-based curriculum or SBC rollout is without a national education standard framework.
We don't have that in the country. So there is no framework. So a task force has now been established to do a national standards framework for the SBC. There is none in place yet.
She says the standard-based curriculum has begun, but only at the elementary level throughout the country. She says it should have been across the board from elementary to year 12. Dr. Devetechi says despite the announcements made that the outcome-based education is removed, teachers are still using it because there are no new syllables.
B is totally thrown out of the window. Teachers across the country are still using the old curriculum, old syllabuses, because no one has written the new syllabus for standard-based education. It is now being written.
A task force is being set up to create one with the help of Japanese government. Esther Bralinwani, NBC National News, Port Moresby.
Turning overseas, Turkish tanks and hundreds of opposition fighters have thrust deep inside Syrian territory in a lighting operation that, within hours, ousted Islamic State jihadists from this key Syrian border town.
Striking the jihadists' stronghold, Turkish and coalition jets hit Jarablus, held by so-called Islamic State, before tanks moved in for the ground offensive. Hundreds of Syrian rebel fighters went with them. Within hours, they'd entered the key border town, liberating it from the militants who quickly withdrew. A journalist who was in a village close to Jarablus as the offensive began said the militants were completely overpowered. There was intense shelling which forced IS back, he says. The Turkish-led offensive had two aims: to push IS back from the border and stop Syrian Kurdish fighters from advancing to Jarablus and consolidating their territory. Turkey sees them as a threat, encouraging Kurdish separatists back here. The diplomatic timing was handy, coinciding with a visit to Ankara by the American Vice President. Turkey has gone from a reluctant partner in the US-led coalition to coordinating this offensive. In return, Joe Biden ordered the Kurds, a US partner on the ground, to withdraw.
They must move back across the river. They cannot, will not, and under no circumstances get American support if they do not keep that commitment.
This appears to have been an extraordinarily swift operation, meeting limited resistance. And Turkey has achieved its two goals of ousting IS militants from Jarablus and getting coalition support to push the Kurdish militia back too. Turkey's biggest intervention in Syria since the war began will be seen here as a significant success. Nearby, we met Abdo Uveis. He and his family fled here from Jarablus when IS took over. Now there's relief. It's like we've been pulled out of a well, he says. Houses have been destroyed and innocent people slaughtered. Thank God we got rid of them. I'm so happy. Would you think about going home to Jarablus now?
Inshallah.
God willing, he tells me. And so it's over within a day. Beating IS will be long and hard, but this will give renewed hope of progress.
An Australian woman charged over the murder of a Bali policeman, along with her British boyfriend, says police should be investigating whether more suspects were involved. Denpasar officials are planning to hand over the case to prosecutors in just a few weeks.
The Denpasar police chief says he hopes police will be able to hand over the case against the couple to prosecutors within 20 days. He says as early as next Monday, the suspects will be brought back here to the crime scene on Kuta Beach for a reconstruction of the morning of the officer's death, when police can check if their stories match.
We'll confront them during the reconstruction maybe. Now we've begun to see the real version, now we will confront them with the results from the interrogation.
The Australian woman's lawyer says based on forensic evidence, he believes there could be more suspects in the case. But the police chief rejects that, saying the foreigners were the only ones involved.
The Australian Federal Treasurer Scott Morrison has issued a stern warning to federal politicians ahead of Parliament's return next week. He's urging them to pass the government's budget savings or risk a recession.
The message is clear.
I do not want my kids to know what a recession is like.
The call to arms even more so.
We are asking Labor to vote for measures that they have already said and indicated they support. But this cannot be the end of the process.
The consequences of inaction threatening.
Admittedly, that is the worst case scenario. That will see our gross debt exceed $1 trillion in a decade.
That scenario is based on the assumption that Parliament does absolutely nothing, failing to pass each and every one of the government's $40 billion worth of outstanding measures. The Treasurer says he doesn't believe that'll happen.
It is a warning, but I remain optimistic.
And Labor has made the election promise to back some of the government's savings.
No amount of bad-tempered foot stamping is going to fix the nation's problems.
But that's not the end of the nation's woes. Australia also has an earnings problem, hit by falls in trade and commodity prices. But something within the government's control is negotiating with the crossbench to get some of those unlegislated measures through the Senate. Labor is also courting their vote on another matter, support to uphold parliamentary privilege on a number of emails seized by the Australian Federal Police during a search of Parliament House servers yesterday.
I'm always cautious about predicting numbers, but what I do know is that we've got the right argument.
Another item on the agenda before the 45th Parliament has even met.
NBC National News continues after the break. Stay with us.